All right, everybody, we'll get started. Thank you everybody for being here tonight. And thank you for coming to our Park Master Plan survey discussion. My name is Brandon Dross. I am the city administrator. We also have joining us today our city planner, Jim Jacks, and then also our city recorder, Kennedy. She will be attending to the chat and she will kind of help run this meeting. So later on, we will be having a Q&A session, and we would like for you to keep all of those questions coming in the chat. And then when time comes, Kennedy will be reading those off to myself and Jim to answer those questions. I do want to acknowledge we have several elected and appointed officials on this Zoom call today. They will be here just to listen to the feedback from residents, listen to the presentation and discussion, and if any questions arise in the community, we will also have this recorded and uploaded to our YouTube page. So why are we here tonight? We are here tonight because there is a need for community input on our parks, and there is need to make sure that we build support in the community for our parks. And the reason why we have you all here today is to kind of discuss some of those results from the park survey that went out in August. We had it open for about 60 days. We had well over 400 members of our community fill out this survey. And we'll be going over the answers to those surveys. And then throughout the night, when we talk about each topic of park, we will be able to give you like a ranked choice voting regarding your top choices for those parks based on the answers that were overwhelming choices in their survey. So we're going to take the data that we received and we're going to try to fine tune that data. So we have additional data to say, hey, this is where all of our answers were. And then here are some of the priorities off of these answers. So then we can take that back to the city council and the planning commission to further along the discussions of the park master plan. The council told the city staff, we would like mainly 3 parks looked at. These 3 parks are Terry Park, Commons Park, and Veterans Park. Those are the 3 parks that we felt need the most attention. And while we discuss those parks, we will be revising Chapter 5 of our Lafayette Parks Master Plan, which was approved in 2013 and had a small revision in 2020 over the capital improvement project. And then with the Chapter 5 revision, Chapter 2 will also be revised. And why is Chapter 2 being revised? Well, in the 10 years since our last survey and last park plan was completed, we've had demographic updates. So everything from median income, the population, to square mileage, to housing, permits, all of this data needs to be factored into the master plan revisions, because when you open up one part of a master plan, you need to open up the demographics. That will help us later on when we talk about, financing options and making sure that we have certain community deliverables met in some of those demographic numbers. So we are going to go park specific. We are going to open up with Terry Park. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So on your screen, you should be able to see what kind of park do you want Terry Park to become? Terry Park came to be a part of this because there's always been an assumption that this was a drivable park and you can always walk and you can always do whatever you'd like in Terry Park. Well, in the summertime, we had some issues with overnight RV parking and people accessing the park after hours. So a fence was put up to kind of deter overnight parking. And so when we put a fence on the park, it was only a temporary mechanism. The goal at that time was for safety and to follow the code to lock the park for overnight access, but we must talk about future use. And a lot of the discussions about Terry Park were, what do we want to see from Terry Park? And a lot of the big picture items that came out of just general discussions with council, with community members, and with current projects were, we'd love to see a skate park. We'd love to see a walking trail with vehicle access. We'd love to see Yamhill River recreation space. And then we'd love to see a family picnic style space. Um, Now, all these are great options. We see they're all very close in terms of answers. Before we discuss, before we ask you to grade your priority scale for these answers, I would also like to give about 5 minutes to Brianna Truden from the National Park Service to talk a little bit about their goals with Yamhill River and how Lafayette is looked at in that. And we've had a steering committee for about a year now, where every city in the county that has access to Yamhill River has really discussed what the feasibility are for park use, for trail use, for river accessibility, and a lot of those topics, Bree would be a lot better to talk to you about. So, Bree, I want to give you a few minutes to kind of talk about what Yamhill Recreation Space looks like at Terry Park.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. And hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. So I'm here to just give a little quick overview of the RTCA program and what we're trying to do with Yamhill River. So the Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance Program is a community-led, community-driven technical assistance program. So we work with jurisdictions and a bunch of other people, communities to, help fill in that kind of gap of technical assistance for their community-based projects. So we got involved with the Yamhill River project after the steering committee wrapped up, I think a couple months ago it was. So the goal with the Yamhill River project is to connect communities back to the river, and it's a cross-jurisdictional platform. Several cities in the county are involved in this. And so that can take shape in like various forms, whether that just be, wildlife viewing, river viewing, non-motorized boat launches, swimming holes. We don't know that yet. That's kind of what we're trying to figure out is what do communities want to see within, their jurisdictions and their cities and their communities. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of, without going into too much detail, I can talk a lot about this. So we're usually a 1-year process, and we can be extended to a 2-year process. And so I think some of this process is going to look like, going out to the community, seeing what they want to see within river access. What does that look like? Working across kind of the system of the Yamhill County River, and then with kind of in each jurisdiction. But I do just want to emphasize that we work with partners and community members, so we're not telling people what to do or where to take their projects. We're just being responsive and helping facilitate it. So, and then I do have Justin Yee here, who is co-leading this project with me. So I want to see, Justin, you have anything you want to add to that real quick?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Just real quick, I wanted to add that, there's this emphasis on non-motorized recreation on the river as the focus of this project. And so just as a real quick overview of the planning process, in partnership with the steering committee and the jurisdictions and the community leaders that are leading this effort, we're trying to understand the current conditions, how are people currently using the river, what are the current amenities in place, and we want to take the next step of understanding what are the desired future uses, experiences, and amenities. And we really want to hear from communities that live along the river, and we'll plan to do some public outreach for that with the steering committee. And then all that will result in a concept plan that will essentially be an articulation of the idea, the vision for recreation on the Yamhill. It's a non-binding plan. It's mainly meant to help move this project forward and understand what the community's priorities are and be able to communicate that with funders, decision makers. So lastly, I just wanted to point you to a project website, yamhillrivers.org, which we could put in the chat. And there are English and Spanish feedback forums that you and anyone else that you think could be interested could leave some comments. So thanks again for the time to just help us give it a little plug and give it back to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Bree and Justin. Would you mind hanging tight at least until the QA, just in case there's a follow-up question regarding the Yamhill River?
Yeah, be happy to. Thank you.
Fantastic. So, as I mentioned earlier, this discussion is all about bringing you the survey results that we had online for 2 months and that you all were able to access and take part in. There's nothing out of tonight's meeting that we know set in stone what anything looks like. And I want to reiterate that this is just a very, very high level view. If you are in support of something tonight, that doesn't mean we know exactly how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, how much it's going to cost, and a timeline. This is just to get more feedback so we can make sure we're assessing the parks as a whole and that we have general feedback as we move forward. So thank you so much, Justin and Bree, for that. So while we go back to I'm going to share my screen again so you have it here. So again, a couple more items that were brought up in the what would you like the park to be that were in the other section. There's also a discussion of the bike riding track, an RC car track, and then more vegetation, which would align with more of xeriscaping, more trees, shrubbery, bushes, that type of installation. So Kennedy's going to go ahead and put a little poll on the screen right now. And all we're asking is grade these in terms of importance and what you feel is the most important versus the least important. And Kennedy should be getting that up in here momentarily. And I asked this to be filled out by members of the community, not myself, Jim, Kennedy, nor members of the NPS. Thank you so much. Okay, give it about another 10 or 15 more seconds, and then I'll move on to comments. All right. Thank you so much all for filling your top priorities out on Terry Park. So now we talk commons. Why are we here with commons and how did we get to this question? So obviously, Commons Park is borders as a part of our community center. And its Anchor Park obviously have been a little, I don't want to say lifeless, but there seems to be a lack of use. What do we really see Commons Park to be? It's a great park now, but it's not really attended to like it should be because there's no real crystal clear direction of what it should be. We've heard everything from let's keep it as an event park, entertainment park to kind of coincide with the community center. We've heard about possibly having water features like reusable water reclamation sprinkler for the youth, along with other water features. We've also heard about sports facilities. It's one of our bigger land masses of park in town. So and we currently already have the footprint for a softball field. But obviously maintaining that and making it a dedicated softball field means obviously upkeep, maintaining, installation of lights, permitted use for those facilities, meaning obviously, for sports leagues to use it. If, you know, basketball, volleyball, a cohab space between numerous sports. We're gonna pop up and just ask you what is your priority? What is your first priority and second, and then so on when it comes to Commons Park? And Kennedy's gonna go ahead and put that up now. And on that Commons Park poll, it's going to ask you rank your favorite to least favorable options, meaning basketball, soccer, and Little League baseball or softball. Commons Park, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong. Commons Park could be multiple sport, but it depends on what sports they would be, to make them multiple use sports parks. So I'll give about 10 more seconds there or so to determine your ranking of favorite to least favorite options.
Yeah, I might comment that Commons Park is just 1.1 acre. Uh, it's not a big park, but in terms of the Lafayette inventory of parklands, it might seem somewhat large, but in the overall scheme of parks throughout the county and the state and the country, a 1.1 acre park is not very large.
Thank you, Jim. And so some other things that were factored into the other section was fitness and agility structures, picnic tables and benches, more vegetation, and RC car track as well. And I want to reiterate, while you see, just because you put something in other doesn't mean it wouldn't be used or thought about as part of the park development. It's just those weren't the major talking points going into the survey. So if there is a possibility for fitness and agility structures or picnic tables, vegetation, etc., we would always look at those options as well, especially when it comes to cost effectiveness in the grand scheme of park planning. And Veterans Park. So Veterans Park, how did we get here? Well, there was always an assumption that it's been used as a dog park. Some have used it as a walking track because there is an undone walking track there that would actually need to be surfaced, but right now it's kind of come in, use it as you may. But as we see in the survey results, there is strong support for a dog park. There is strong support for landscape with a walking trail, and play space area. And you also see in the other section, disability multi-uses, so more of an ADA compliance type of park, sensory disabilities, all that. Relaxation, maybe a covered area, bench, table, and then additionally more vegetation. I do want to reiterate as we look at the dog park, the dog park would take numerous sections because, you know, when we look at multi-use, while it can be done, dog parks would actually take a bigger square footage of the park because we have to actually segment dogs into small breed and large breed, and then also have fencing, and then also have water supply for those for dogs. We would need one of those multi-tiered water facilities. Kennedy's gonna go ahead and just kind of put your order of preference regarding Veterans Park there, and where you see as your first choice, your second choice, and your third choice. Give about 10 more seconds there. Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Now, lastly, some things I want to just at least talk about, at least have a conversation. So, when we asked about future park development, we asked, how would you support those, financially? And obviously, the resounding answer was general fund tax revenue, and then looking at state and federal grant opportunities. We do see some appetite there for bond measure. We see some appetite there for a monthly fee added to utility bill. And I just want to stress, these are just options to consider. None of these are we're not gonna move forward with one of them right off the bat. We're not gonna say, okay, well, we're just gonna jump to a bond or jump to a monthly fee. We never want to do that. We always want to work within our means, and we also want to work with county, state, and federal partners in achieving financial responsibility of these projects. But I at least want to have those there as options because as we look, I've gotten some recent projects in the region that had some state funding and had funding from the city. As you see in 2017, we had our ADA compliant restroom improvement at Perkins Park. That project was about $100,000 and we had about $75,000 in state grants. That's fantastic. We only had to put in $25,000. I wish every project was like that. I think we all do. You look at the city of Ashland, phase 1 of East Main Park, $1.4 million with about $1 million in state grants. Fantastic. Only $400,000 were used. But just look at the scale of some of these projects. Just the bathrooms, just the restrooms alone, were about $100,000. So when we look at the scope of projects, things like bathrooms, things like water, sanitary system setup, permits, electrical, all these things are factored into the cost. City of Ashland, they have a tennis court resurfacing, a little more than $1 million. They got $720,000 in state grants. St. Helens Riverwalk, where they did about 36 linear feet of sidewalks and surface walkways. You had about $3 million with $1.2 million in state grants. City of Harrisburg Park Trail, about $200,000 and about $150,000 in state grants. And then City of Veneta, they did a dog park with pickleball courts, almost $1 million, and you had about $200,000 in state grants. Just looking at something like the City of Veneta, dog park and pickleball courts, something similar to what we're looking at for veterans and possibly commons. Look at that price tag. That's almost $1 million. Grants help offset the cost, obviously, and we would try our best to do that. But I just want to bring that to you as we start looking at where our funds are at, and then when we ask you to prioritize the funding mechanisms here in a few moments. So, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, no, I did not have a
Oh,
comment.
okay, sorry. So when we look at our SDC fund, and what SDC is, it is our system development charge, where any new construction, new subdivision is going to pay more or less a capacity fee to buy into the system now that they are now residents, homeowners, etc. So we do this for all of our infrastructure, from water, wastewater. We do this to streets, parks, and then the school has an excise tax where they also we also pay into the capacity of that. So the average new single family unit pays into the park SDC fund $4,017. Not a lot, but it's a good amount. We are now at a structure where we feel that the SDCs are being updated in a more equitable manner compared to the previous generations of SDCs. And this is completely paid for by the developer. This is something that no current resident is paying into. This is fund that's only coming from development of single family housing. You see right there, we have about $756,000. We have $700,000 there that is undedicated. We most of this has come in through our new Meadowbrook subdivision. But that $700,000 is for anything used for park development, acquiring parkland, park infrastructure, etc. So that is all that can be used for is park improvements, park upgrades, etc. So we have about $700,000 there. And then when we look at our yearly general fund allocation for parks, we have about $215,000. You have your salaries there, which is a portion of the general fund employees. That portion of their salaries come out of parks and everybody in public works. And then some city staff who help on parks projects. Service contracts, that's a big chunk of that. That's going to be our GT landscaping. They do all of our landscaping around town, irrigation, etc. So we don't really spend a lot of park money out of our general fund. It's a small sliver. That can be increased, obviously, through the budget committee and city council. But then that would be looking at taking out of our reserves or moving money from other departments to the park and facilities. And as I mentioned, parks and facilities, the community center is tied to the parks general fund budget. So I just kind of wanted to give you a financial picture. Things are going up for everybody. But when we look at the city cost, I just wanted to show you what other cities are paying for recent projects and kind of where our financial capabilities are current day. I do also want to mention when it comes to the SDCs, a majority of those SDCs have come from the new subdivision. And outside of any large subdivision coming in or major boom in construction, once those funds are used, they will not be replenished. So anything we do out of SDCs, once we see that go down to 100,000, 50,000, that's really going to be it until we see some construction in the city. So then we would be left with general fund and then grant matching as we move further along with projects. So Kennedy's going to pop up in something now, just kind of your appetite again for financing. Your first choice and second choice amongst a bond measure and monthly fee added to utility bills. Obviously, as we mentioned, we will do our best to make sure any project is going to get hopefully some type of grant funding. And we will try our best through numerous funds from the state, federal, private sector, like T-Mobile, Lowe's, AERP. They tend to have community grants. We would exhaust as many grants as possible. But for those grants, we need a sound, approved, community-backed master plan so that they know that the community is behind all of the improvements to the parks. So I'll give you another few more seconds to answer that. Great. Thank you so much. Now, I know that seems to be a lot of information. I know, like I mentioned earlier, this is very high level. My goal for this town hall tonight was just for me to communicate where our survey results were at. I know there was a big push on social media, on our app, through our counselors, our planning commissioners, city staff, to really get this survey into the hands of people and make sure they filled it out. I wasn't expecting all 400 plus people to be in this room tonight, but I at least want to make sure that my commitment to the city, and especially in any type of generational planning document, is making sure the public is aware from the minute we start to the minute we end. So this is not going to be the first and only meeting. There's going to be numerous meetings. The plan with today is just to take some more of the data that we presented to you, get a little bit more granular detail on priorities based on the answers that were given on the surveys, and then take that back to city council take that back to the planning commission, take that to the city staff, and we really start to decipher some of the information that was presented to us from the community. And then start having those conversations, start seeing where we're gonna go with the plan. Now, Jim has done numerous master plans. He actually led our last master plan. And just from a timeline sense, Jim, from today to approval, we're probably thinking a good 4 to 6 months, if not longer, correct?
Yes, I think that's a good range for this project.
Thank you. And so we, as a city staff, will continue to push out as much information as we can on this. I know your counselors are excited about this. I know the planning commission is excited about this. There's a lot of excitement, and synergy around the parks. There's a lot of synergy, I think, internally because we received, a grant for the transportation system plan. Things are needed in Lafayette, and to start the synergy, to start really going out and trying to attract that funding, we need to have these plans in place. And this is just one of those steps. So we have about 25 minutes for Q&A. Kennedy has kind of been watching the Q&A for the, oh, sorry, I had one more thing. Thank you, Kennedy, for putting that up. As we talk parks, there's always going to be an importance of what park we want to look at doing first. You saw some figures. You know what's realistic. As a member of the community, our goal is to take that realistic sense of what we can do with these parks and bring it into where we can make dollars and cents, with obviously with general fund money, with SDCs, and with grants, and what's practical and not. Obviously, we can't have a SeaWorld here. Obviously, though, I would love to have a baseball team here. There are certain things that we just cannot have. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the financial support. We just don't have the capabilities to have. So when we look at the priorities, your priorities, what park do you want to see done first? What park would you like to see completed second? And what park would you like completed third? I'll go ahead and give you a few seconds for that. And then we're going to go ahead and get into the questions and answer part of this town hall. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your input on all of these questions tonight. Once we take these questions, we'll take this data and we're going to make it supplemental to the other survey data that we have as we start having more discussions with the city council and planning commission. This data will be taken to the city council at the November 14th city council meeting. So for that, I'll open it up to the questions for Jim and myself. Kennedy, is there, can you go ahead and start?
I have not seen any questions come through yet.
Okay. Anybody has any questions? If you want to go ahead and type them into the chat, so we can go ahead and make sure that we know who asked, and we can make sure that we have a response to them properly. And once again, this is being recorded. This will be uploaded to the city's YouTube page before the end of the week, based upon logistics and making sure everything downloads. This is our first time doing a virtual town hall meeting, so please bear with me. I'm normally an in-person type of person, but I did want to make sure that people who wanted to attend this on a weeknight, cold, rainy night, they were able to do that.
Okay, Brandon, there was something in the chat. I thought it was more of a statement, but it is a question.
Okay.
Asking if the city would consider partnering with parks and recreations and different club sporting sports as far as I believe Commons Park is.
Thank you, Kennedy, and thanks to whoever asked that. No, that was discussed at a planning commission meeting recently, and we're going to be looking for partners in everything that we do. If there's a way to get a partner, especially a sports partner, if Commons Park does go this way, and it ends up being a sports park, there's definitely going to be members of the sports and rec league community involved from day one, especially if they have an interest in helping fund and helping bring people to the table in Lafayette. I don't see a reason why that wouldn't happen. But obviously this has to be the goals of the community to make Commons a sports park would be the ultimate decision maker in that. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we've gotten another one from a resident. Joel asked, could they hold kindergarten games there since the field size for that group is relatively small?
And are we talking about Commons Park?
I believe so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, anything is possible. I mean, obviously we see the data. The data shows. Let me actually pull that up. The data shows a want for a sports park. I know right now it's currently retrofitted for a softball park, at least the base on softball little league. So normally when you have kindergartners or grade school sports, you can tend to make things a little bit more compact. So that if that seems to be the consensus coming out of all of the community engagement and it's cost effective and we have the partners in the community who want to make that happen, I don't see why that couldn't be a possibility. All of these items rely on the community support and how much support we have for a certain park project. So I just want to reiterate that I love sports. I love trails. I love boat docks. I love all this, but I want to make sure we have a general consensus. This is going to be community driven. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that whatever comes our way is feasible. Not just from dollars and cents, but a land use, because everything we do, we have to make sure that the land use is capable for that land.
All right, Brandon, we just got another question from Marilyn. She
Okay.
says, as Lafayette is sorely lacking in a venue of any size for events, is the city considering a larger facility? Would a multi-function facility be considered?
That's a great question. We've talked a little bit about larger facilities. I know 2 years ago, during my first budget season, there was talk about what would a city hall community center hybrid look like. Why I would love for that to happen, I just don't know if there's enough. Commons Park probably could house something like that is multifunctional facility. But I think a lot of those recreational opportunities may have to be indoor. Because based on, and Jim, this may be more along something for you to answer, but when we look at the land use for commons, we would be able, if it got to the point of a multi-function facility, it would probably be smaller indoor sports, right? Just because of the way Commons Park is situated in terms of the size of the park compared to what normal multi-function facilities are on bigger lands in other cities.
Well, yes, Commons Park is only 1.1 acres. It may seem bigger, probably because on the east or the north side and the west side, there are public street rights of way. On the west side, that right of way is unimproved. And a little corner there has the community building on it. But depending on what kind of facilities are in mind, then you'd need a certain building, a certain size building. And then that, whether it's going to fit on the property or not, and the need for parking, all of those things would come into play. And then in some cases, a multi event center of some sort, you'd find, well, yeah, we can fit it there. It won't be as big as we want, but we can fit something there. So just the size of the property is, I think, going to be an important factor in determining what goes there.
And I think, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but during the last survey process, there was some talk about Terry Park and like amphitheater space and the way how it was, how the slope was. I mean, that wasn't a question. I mean, that wasn't a topic of discussion this go around. Not that it wouldn't be factored into the discussions going forward, but I think that was something they talked about doing some type of multi-venue site there as well.
Yeah, the last go around, roughly 10 years ago, there was a person or a couple of people who were aware of other places, whether it's, what is it, the event center at George Washington on the heights above the Columbia River, those kinds of event centers. Certainly, we don't have the size of property to do something like that, but I think that's where their idea came from, given that the Terry Park site has a slope up to the north.
Mm.
If you had a stage down low, then that natural amphitheater could work out possibly. Of course, that would mean also that whatever event is on the stage, typically a musical event, that sound would come up the hill and come into those single family dwellings that are up the hill. So, as with any park, whether it's an indoor or outdoor facility, there's always concern about how will it affect abutting property owners and even nearby property owners.
So so like a covered basketball area that doubles as a covered event space, that can be something that's feasible in a place like Commons Park, like kind of how we have the gazebo at Perkins Park. And we had, I mean, and if it got to the point to where we did a volleyball basketball court, something like that could probably be done. Maybe not something enclosed like a community center, but something like that probably would situate better on that kind of property.
Well, I don't know if it would be better, but certainly a basketball court or a volleyball court, even a couple of each or something like that. They don't take up as much space as a little league field or a soccer field, but some communities have those facilities and then they put a roof over them. So you might have a pavilion with open sides and then the one or two basketball courts and a couple of volleyball courts inside. So it just kind of depends on what the community comes to a consensus about, and then ensuring that it can fit on the site and have the facilities that the community wants.
Jim, this might be a question for you. It's a follow-up from Marilyn. She's asking, how much usable space is there at Terry Park for a facility?
The size of Terry Park is 5.5 acres. So of these three parks that we're focusing on tonight, it by far is the largest. And of course, it starts up halfway up the hill, if you will. And a good portion of it is sloped down toward the bottom. It's in the 100-year floodplain. And of course, then it has the Yamhill River. So some people would be thinking, well, it would be good to have along the Yamhill River a take in or a put in, take out dock facility of some sort. And then people would also say, well, maybe some kind of a dock for fishing, even ADA accessible fishing. Some people might want to just have a park bench along the river bank. It's not a low bank. You have to scramble down a pretty steep slope to get from the lowest level of Terry Park down to the water itself. But certainly with 5.5 acres, the chances of having more than one kind of use would likely fit on that property rather than just a basketball court or two and a volleyball court or two, or one little league field, or one of whatever. So hopefully, with that number of acres, there could be more than one function on that park.
And I also do want to, as a follow-up to discussion earlier about veterans, that is also going to be the most northern park that we will be looking at. So I just want to make sure that uh, people understand Veterans Park, maybe the closest park for a lot of people who may be newer in town. So I just want to keep that in everybody's mindset. There wasn't any parkland developed as part of the new subdivision. So we will see some more activity in these parks. I can definitely see over the next generation as we start seeing more families move in. And so I just want to make sure that we are setting the next generation of Lafayette residents up for park activities and having sustainable parks. Probably have time for maybe another question or two before we start wrapping up.
I don't see any more questions coming in, Brandon, but we can give it another minute or so.
Okay. Let me actually. I guess while we're here and we have a couple of minutes, what I would like to share is we're working on our chapter 2 draft as well. And just to kind of show you some of the demographical changes the city has kind of seen over the past since our last discussion on park master planning that use the 2012 data or 2010 data. Let me show here. So as you see here, Lafayette, we are kind of treading the same percentage as the county and the state in toddlers. We're about the same trend as Yamhill County when it comes 5 to 19. And that's a gap that we hear a lot about. There's not enough for those teenagers to do in town. Perkins Park has some activities for the little ones, and then we also have a Plantation Park, which has some items for the little ones. But the biggest need I hear, especially from some of the youth, is, "Hey, what can I do anything at a park?" So we want to kind of keep that into consideration as we start looking at parks. School enrollment, this kind of coincides with some of the stuff I talked about a little while ago. Elementary age students, we have about 45% of the school enrollment is elementary school. We're probably going to see that increase as we go, as we have the new subdivisions. You're going to see bigger and families with smaller children. The housing trends, we see renter occupied, similar to Yamhill County in the state, all bigger with the owner occupied compared to Yamhill County in the state. Renter occupied is only 11%. Building permits is actually being updated. This is very draft format. I was just trying to fill some time since we have a couple of minutes. The economy, one thing that could kind of help us or hurt us when it comes to grants is going to be the median income. You see, there's been a drastic change in income in Lafayette from the 2010 census to the 2022 American Community Survey. We are outpacing Yamhill County in Oregon. From my verification, I think we are now the highest median income in the county, just above Dundee, and above the county in the state. What that means for us is when we apply for grants, a lot of times the grants will look at the median income of the residents and the poverty levels. And a lot of times some of those federal grants will have to meet certain income requirements. State grants, not so much. State grants, we are considered a rural county. So they look at things a little differently when it comes to rural counties, but when it comes to federal grant dollars, we are part of the Portland Metro. So our numbers are factored into not only the Metro data, but also census track, which is used for community development block grants. They look at a lot of AMI, which would be the um, average median income in the community. So the higher the income, the more it hurts us with some of those federal grants. Most state grants, they will not care so much about the income. And going back to the poverty, when we mentioned earlier about federal grants, they look at the poverty level, and we see compared to 2012, or 2009, that number has been cut in half from about 12% to about 6.5%. Just to kind of summarize, the young population needs park and recreation facilities like we had mentioned a few minutes ago. The residential land develops the Park STC will provide funds to purchase equipment and facilities, develop parks, and contribute to acquiring new lands. The median income has been increasing and is significantly higher than for the Yamhill County and for Oregon. And the poverty level is now significantly lower than Yamhill County and Oregon. So, we will continue to monitor those demographic trends. Obviously, the last data that we have is from 2022. The next ACS can show us much closer to that 6-digit number, just due to the new housing coming in, bringing in higher incomes. So I just kind of want to, I guess I'll kind of stop there. Unless there's any more questions, from the community.
No more questions.
Awesome.
I do just want to note, Marilyn added into the chat that Veterans Park was donated in honor of our veterans, and that they believe that the mayor at the time had suggested putting some type of plaque to honor veterans.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I think that's been mentioned quite a few times from members in the community and at some public meetings. Well, got a few minutes left. I will give you back about 5 minutes of your night. This will be recorded. As mentioned, as we kick this off, this will be uploaded to the YouTube before the end of the week. We are going to take all the information that we received from the participants tonight, the participants from the initial survey, and then we're going to go ahead and pass that information along to City Council, Planning Commission, and the city staff will use that as we start revising Chapter 5. And we've put the final touches to Chapter 2, which I just kind of went over quickly when it comes to the demographics. We thank you all so much for being here and for watching and for asking questions. We thank you for taking a part of the survey, spending your Halloween Eve learning more about your local city and the things that were going on. And please, any conversation you have in the community with the community member, just let them know about the parks. This and our transportation infrastructure are two major keys of city sustainability. And over the next few years, there's going to be numerous conversations in the community. But parks right now, first and foremost, please make sure you have any questions, have them reach out to me. Come to council meetings, let them know they can come to speak planning commission meetings, any feedback, make sure that they're engaged, because these are their parks and we want to make sure that we are holding their parks to what they expect them to be. And with that, I'll thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jim, for being here. Thank you, Kennedy, for the logistics of this meeting. This is a first of hopefully more virtual meetings to come. And once again, thank you so much, and enjoy your night, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you.